What's up, guys? This is God, Grit, and Glory, and I am your host, Veto Creed. We talk about the stuff that most people stay quiet about: Jesus, business, politics, and occasionally a few conspiracy theories. No scripts, no filters, just straight up truth. So join us as we unravel and speak truth. Hi, this is Vito with God, Grit, and Glory. We're here to discuss some conspiracies. Well, so they call conspiracies. There's a lot of stuff floating on the internet right now that's potentially controversial in regards to Charlie Kirk's death. So there's potentially a new conspiracy that I see practically every single day. Well, of course, when this was still fairly new to the news, everybody had an opinion about it, whether they were influencers or mainstream media and so forth. But most of it, of course, was on X and on TikTok and X. It was on X, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So, anyways, going around this, there's a ton of stuff that starts with like the trapdoor under the ground tunnel theory, where it talks about, oh, there was a hologram. This one I thought was a little outlandish and a little bit out there, because it talks about potentially that Charlie Kirk had actually been a hologram, and that camera behind him that hung right above his head was actually, in fact, a hologram. So a very expensive $60,000 camera. I mean, this one has actually made me giggle a little bit internally, because it's just ridiculous. There's no way that could have happened. The second one, I mean, ultimately there was another one. So I think there's probably at least 100 by now, but we're going to go through the top maybe 10, maybe 15. So this was a left-wing organized involvement with Tyler Robinson. So Tyler Robinson is actually the person that got arrested initially with all of this. Well, kind of backing up a little bit. So there was an incident that happened. Okay, so just to familiar you guys with the situation. So on September 10th, Charlie Kirk attended the Utah University, and he was basically going through a speech. And during his speech, they had asked him a question about violence and specifically transgenders. He said that there was a lot of violence towards specifically the shootings, the school shootings, the church shootings that had been going on for the last few years. And so he had pointed this out in his speech. He always does. He talks a lot about gender equality and stuff like that. I mean, specifically talks about gender neutrality, woke ideologies, and how they're wrong, and biblically speaking, they're wrong. Charlie Kirk was always the type of person that was leaning towards what the Bible taught and what Jesus taught us, instead of what mainstream media taught. And of course, even he wouldn't ever support any specific ideology, whether it was right-leaning or left-leaning. He was always God-centric, specifically Jesus-centric. So kind of going into this, organized left-wing terrorist network involved was, that was suspicious in of itself. So Tyler Robinson, let's kind of go through that. There's a lot of stuff that had been surfaced. He was at a Dairy Queen. He basically changed his clothes 3 times. He was before he got on the roof, he was wearing one set of clothes, and then he got on the roof, he was wearing another one. And then when they recorded him with this potato, I should say, that was recording him on the school property, supposedly, one thing they failed to clip was the 3 minutes. So supposedly, like, you have this person walking behind the building there, but the corner shot, you can see it, and they didn't actually show it where he's supposedly laying down and he's taking a shot. Like, that's the most critical and important shot. That one was kind of the thing that pissed me off a little bit, because it's like, where's the rest of that video? Like, it just shows him walking across, and he's not even really in a hurry. It looks like he's sort of just like speed walking. I was like, yeah, if you just shot somebody, you're going to be walking a lot faster than speed walking. So he walks across, and then where there's some flat TPO roof, there's no reflection, there's no shadow, there's no nothing. So it shows, it suggests that the video was edited. And then when he gets off the roof, he's not carrying a gun. He has a backpack on. They've talked about it was a 30-06. The whole situation's weird, because that gun is almost impossible to disassemble. There's claims out there that the gun was disassembled on the roof. There's actually a military guy on Instagram that tried to disassemble one of those guns in live time. He was recording himself. I think he was like 3-something minutes or something. And he's a trained professional. He's in the military. So there's no possible way that this individual, Tyler Robinson, could have disassembled it and then put it into where? It doesn't even disassemble more than a couple parts. So where's he going to put it? In his backpack? or where did he put it? So that was in of itself super suspicious. So he gets off the roof, he crosses the street. Nobody, of course, notices him carrying a gun or anything else. I mean, and then he goes into the woods and he plants his bag, right? The bag with the gun. But what's crazy is the bag that they had found had a gun that was fully assembled. So what is it? He actually had a gun that was disassembled. He pulled it up there. So he got on the roof with a disassembled gun. He assembled it. He took a shot. He disassembled it, and then he got off the roof, ran into the bushes, and then assembled it again. And then he went to a Dairy Queen. Is that the story you guys expect us to believe? They just recently, in the last couple of days, somebody had posted on, I seen it on X, where he's wearing different clothes, and the backpack is actually black in the video that they released initially versus his backpack that was navy blue. So very suspicious. So the picture of the two people is actually not the person. And then you can get into some of the more details, such as, the text messages between the transgender boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever you want to call him, and this transformer, I should say, sorry, I got to correct myself, this transformer that he supposedly dated. So you have this transformer boyfriend or girlfriend, they, them, where they had a relationship together, and there's this AI exchange that happened, I think, on Discord, and they're talking to one another and going back and forth. And as this conversation is being had, even AI, I think somebody pulled this and they did an AI search to see if AI wrote this, and AI said this is 100% AI written. So they were not even creative. It's like, I don't have the exact exchange in front of me, but I'm sure a lot of you guys can look it up or probably had already seen it, where literally the exchange is just absurd. I mean, this exchange is going back and forth with him and his supposed they, them. And this conversation is just absolutely ridiculous. It talks about, I bought a scope and da-da-da-da, and they're going back and forth. But we're not gonna talk about that too much, because that's an obvious plant. That's an obvious plant where I feel that whoever's involved, and we'll talk about who actually I genuinely think is involved. There's also a couple of conspiracies that are interesting. I don't think anything is totally far-fetched these days, because given our climate and where we are as a society, I think it's absolutely ridiculous on what people are getting away with. So I wouldn't totally rule anything out, to be honest with you, whether it's coming from the far left or from the right or from our neutral party. So that being said, that's one of the craziest ones. And then, of course, his dad turns him in. You have the situation where his dad turns him in. He came home, his dad turns him in, and somebody offered him to pay him a reward money for finding him or whatever, and he supposedly turned that down. And just to stem into a little bit more, they claim that the construction company that then did the cleanup after, which is another issue, basically after the crime scene of the shooting, the crime scene actually got repaved and all new sod got put down. So in other words, a construction company comes in and they redo the entire area at Utah University. It's like, what is going on? Who would allow that? Like, at which point would that have been normal? Like, I don't understand. Like, why is FBI not involved? Why is police not involved? Why is the whole place not being investigated for a bullet? Okay, so the person that supposedly redid the pavement happened to be a company that is registered to none other than Tyler Robinson's father. So I thought that was just completely bonkers. And Tyler Robinson's father, his name is Matt Robinson. So Matt Robinson, who is Matt Robinson? I mean, not everybody knows much about him other than the fact that he was specifically a registered Republican. He takes his family on hunting trips and stuff like that. There's not much about him. I mean, supposedly he does construction, and that's why he has a company called Precision Granite and Marble LLC, the one that was associated to it. Specifically, that was the company that did the work at Utah Valley University. So, I mean, come on, it's like, why not investigate a little bit further? It gets a little bit wild. Let's just say if this wasn't true and it was overinflated, I mean, what are the chances that there was an individual that owned a construction company that happened to have a similar name, to the said person, okay? So, and then, of course, once you go down this rabbit hole a little bit, let's just go back up a little bit. So this is where I noticed a bunch of really absurdity in this situation. So there was an incident where when Charlie Kirk supposedly gets shot, right? I mean, we already talked about how he got shot from the roof. So there was another conspiracy that came out. We call it conspiracy, but I'm just saying that loosely. Where there was a lapel mic. So the mic explodes and his shirt flares out, right? And so a lot of people were saying early into the video that was not his neck where he got shot here on the left side. It wasn't an actual entry wound. It was actually an exit wound. Either way, exit wound or entry wound, I think it's difficult to justify how truly horrific it has to look if there is, in fact, this much blood. So let me just, 30-06, just so you understand, it would blow a hole the size of probably my face, and I got a pretty big head. So it's like, imagine, like, it would come out of the backside, right? It would just literally all the meat, and then all the meat would probably be on all the people standing behind him. Literally, quite every single person standing behind him probably would have gotten some a spray from that blood. So it's pretty gory. It should have been pretty gory, but it wasn't. Once you start looking into the weeds here, so that never happened. So the lapel mic. Now, kind of talking about the lapel mic. The lapel mic is actually a mic that they believe that was a detonator. In other words, it was a bomb. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. So the lapel mic is something that supposedly exploded. It was designed to explode like a bomb. Basically, there was some technology that the Israelis used to use, like detonating pagers and stuff that could explode. And so there was an individual standing in the front where he had basically a detonator on his arm, which one of the observations was. So when he had moved his arm, he had actually set it off. So that was one of the assumptions that was made, that, oh man, his, standing right in front of him and he moved his arm, and then all of a sudden he shot, right? Or in other words, detonates that where it explodes and it shoots him. It's hard to say what the true design was of this lapel mic, because the security detail that was surrounding Charlie Kirk during the incident, they were awfully suspicious. And I'm sure you guys have seen these videos more than anything else. It talks about how one standing on the left, all of a sudden they all get flustered, and somebody will say, well, of course somebody just got shot, of course they're going to be flustered. Well, no, not like flustered as in they were like, they jumped. No, it was more like flustered as in, let's move. And so you have them, one completely jumps over the front table where Charlie Kirk was sitting, kind of runs up in front, pulls something off of Charlie Kirk. Another one standing in the front, they exchange something where he hands something off to him. That person puts it in his back pocket and walks off. Another person is somehow involved. You have all of these people that are there, and there's just a lot going on, and this whole situation is just crazy. And there's stuff being pulled off of Charlie for what God knows what reason. Usually in a situation like this, it's a very simple situation. He's on the ground, everybody's freaking out. Security runs up, making sure that nobody gets shot. Kind of like what happened with Trump, right? Which, I don't want to get into that, but there was a lot of people suspecting the fact that Trump's assassination attempt was also a facade or just a skit, right? Because this is a little bit more far-fetched, in my opinion, because it's very difficult to pull off. But if you watch some of the videos that have been surfacing for the last couple of months, where Trump is literally, he has a camera crew kind of surrounding him. And when that lady, they're all kind of squatting down, and he kind of puts his fist up into the air, yeah, America, and fight, fight, fight. He says, fight, fight, fight. And then there's the raising of the flag in the background. So like everything just happens like, perfect timing, right? So as all this is happening, it's like, are you kidding me right now? Like, who has the time, first of all, to raise a flag in the moment, and sort of like the angles and cinema, right? And Trump always talks about cinema, and he's a big cinema buff. He was an Apprentice and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that he's responsible for this, specifically Charlie Kirk's death. Don't get me wrong. I've been a pretty strong Trump supporter since through 2016 until now. It's been probably almost a decade. But I will say that it was really suspicious. I found it really suspicious, the fact that he was at a baseball game the day after, doing his little dance, on stage, and basically singing and having a good time and smiling. And some people would say, oh, well, that's just Trump. He's not very empathetic. And look, no matter how you look at this, I mean, I was very disappointed that your friend Charlie, the one that pretty much dedicated the last 10 years of his life, spent all this time dedicating and committing himself to you, and you have just, instead of mourning for at least a couple of weeks, I mean, look, I mean, even if you don't, have the sympathy or the empathy to sympathize for your friend here, or supposedly your friend, why not just put on an impression just so he doesn't look so bad, right? I thought that was way too coincidental and just kind of almost awful, because you sort of look at this and you're like, that just doesn't look good. It's not a good look for anybody. So, especially for your party. And I mean, this guy, I remember Charlie Kirk is doing his podcast when Trump was announced president. I was actually watching him, and he like puts his head down in his hat, and his wife walks up to him and like says, it's okay. And he's like crying. He's actually shedding tears because he is genuinely happy that Trump has been announced president, and he understands that this has bought America another lifeline. It gave America the ability to be able to recoup of some of the sinister stuff going on with all the gender dysphoria going on, and all of the men and women's sports, and all of these men and women, what is a woman, what is a man, conversations going on. And I mean, the woke left has completely lost their mind. They're deranged when it comes to these topics. They have no explanation for anything. They're constantly going off the handles with their ideologies. I mean, recently we had this King of Kings protest, or King's protest, where they're, of course, MSNBC's just real popular over inflating and stuff like that. But that's a topic for another day. So anyways, going back to this conversation, we're sort of talking about this because it's, I want to bring it up, and I'll bring up Trump later, but you have a lot of other stuff that, that may be related to it. So like they're claiming that Antifa had something to do with it, similar to what happened with Trump during the shots. But like I said, if you sort of understand that whole thing was sort of like looked a little suspicious, I couldn't honestly make the claim that it was in fact Antifa, to be honest with you, because it didn't. Antifa tends to be a lot more reckless. In fact, if I were to blame Antifa for anything, would be probably a little bit more for incidences like January 6th, to be honest with you, even though we now know that was a federally coordinated, FBI op, PSYOP and stuff like that. So we understand that was that. And then there was a lot of, the one thing is, I will say this about Charlie, and I mean, I love the guy. I knew him. I had the opportunity to meet him in Tampa about 5 years ago at one of the Turning Point USA SAS conferences, which is a Student Action Summit conference. We actually had an exhibit there at his conference for Voicebound, which is our decentralized network, which we'll eventually talk about. But so I got the pleasure of meeting him. He was semi-popular. I mean, he wasn't the guy that he was that you guys seen in the last 5 years. He's grown quite popular and, more of a celebrity, to be honest with you, in the last 5 years than he had been back then, even though, that being said, I had an opportunity to sort of talk to him. He had this very glowing persona to him, this aura around him where he was very capable of being very authentic and genuine and just kind of like looked into your soul when you were talking to him. He had this sort of like gift, and he had a very, very strong presence when he was around. He definitely, you could feel that he was there. And as I was talking to him, and I can, sense that there was a lot of sincerity there in his voice and everything like that. So I want to mention that just because I do have some personal connections with Charlie. It's not just me putting in my opinion, because I did listen to a lot of his work, his podcasts, and a lot of his Instagram reels and everything like that. I kept a very close, following I was a big follower of his, close follower. So I supported his understanding and value system for families, because I'm a family man myself, also a Christian, a devoted Christian. He was a big fan and supporter of John MacArthur. He had mentioned that when John MacArthur had passed, that we had lost a legend. He constantly quoted him in his podcast because of his theology and just his overall viewpoints on that. So I just want to mention that. So he was, in fact, a big supporter of John MacArthur. So going back into that, I just wanted to mention that because it's important to know the fact that We're not, some of us may just have opinions just because we see something on the internet and we're like, oh, this person's that person, this. In fact, I will say even more so. I mean, I decided I made just the same week that Charlie Kirk had been shot. I mean, it was a very devastating blow to me. I mean, both me and my wife and we were basically in mourning because we were really sad about it. In fact, I'll be the first to admit that I did shed some tears. I had some tears run down my face when I heard about it. But on top of that, what was more difficult, it wasn't the sadness as much as it was the breakage, the internal kind of devastation that followed the very, like, my soul kind of cried out. My soul cried out because I couldn't understand why my soul was crying out in the moment. And I had actually, the way I found out about it is my wife told me, she texted me, she's like, did you hear Charlie Kirk just got shot? And I instantly got on Instagram and I said, what's going on? And I got on my knees and I was like, I'm going to pray, because if he did in fact, get shot and he still has a chance to live, I want to make sure I can pray for him, because he's a, brother in Christ and stuff like that. So I got on my knees and started praying. I said, God, can you spare him? He is a big voice of the people here. He is the big voice of your work. And I wanted to make sure that, he had a chance, fighting chance. But, once I finished my prayer, I got online. I started doing a little bit of, research and digging around and looking at what had happened. And after watching that video of him getting shot, supposedly getting shot, and like his neck and whatnot, and there's some bleeding, I realized, there's no way he could have survived that. The whole situation just looked like it was too gory. I mean, it was pretty bad. So I had very little hope for that. So when they had rushed him to the hospital and they said that there was a surgeon that was operating on him, I don't actually think he actually made it to the car. To be honest with you, my opinion is he pretty much, as soon as his body hit the ground, he was already gone. His soul had pretty much left his body. That's my opinion. So I think whoever had coordinated this initially, they were on track to not fail. Let's just put it that way. They had all intentions of taking him out. This wasn't one of those things where, oh yeah, we're gonna take a shot at him with an amateur from a rooftop. No, it's we're gonna do this, and it's gonna make an impact. So, and then you have one of the things is, some people say it's anti-Semitic. I mean, you have people like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens. They have a lot of opinions about what had happened. Specifically, the word Israeli is used a lot with Candace Owens. Her talking about this is as Mossad, this is Israelis, and basically any Jewish influencers, stuff like that, and so forth. I mean, you got Tucker Carlson. He's a big voice of the people, specifically Republicans, and those that watch him and follow him closely know the fact that he's really gone rogue on. More recently on Israel. I mean, he's very anti-Israel, and he's like, they're horrible people and they do a lot of things. And I don't know if they're being paid or, by somebody. I mean, or they're just, who knows? It's hard to say, why they're so anti-Israel. I have no idea. So there was one theory. So there was one theory about accomplices and hand gesture suspicious activity with the planes and stuff like that. That one I found was a little bit suspicious. There were supposedly countdowns with their fingers, and you had security basically turning on their Meta glasses. They had all sorts of stuff that was happening kind of in real time, and it was kind of hard to keep up because there was so much going on in the crowd, and there was this decoy, this person standing out in the field. I mean, right in front and center, turns around, and he's laughing and smiling and saying a bunch of weird stuff. And then right after the supposed shot, you have somebody that was apprehended as the potential shooter. And then it turned out that he wasn't the shooter. And then there was another person that was the shooter, and he didn't have a gun. And so you have, a ton of this crap that's happening, right? You have this individual that claims that, and here's the thing that really pissed me off, to be honest with you. So if you shot him, right? If you're you're the shooter, right? And the security or the police or whoever ended up apprehending this person, or that old man that they arrested and sort of dragged him away. The one thing that kind of irritated me about that situation is, well, did he announce himself? And he's like, hey, I'm the shooter. Come and get me. I mean, did he have a gun? Because the interesting part is, if he had a gun, that means they should have shot him. Security's instant response should be, after you apprehend him, you shoot him down, right? You gun him down instantly. But he didn't actually have a gun on him. They never found a gun on him after the arrest. What, did he just scream, "Oh, I'm the shooter"? Come on. That smells planned, or coordinated. Yeah, it's written coordination all over it. I mean, let's just put it that way. There's just no way. I don't believe that for a second that individual had anything to do with it. They say he was a decoy. This same individual was also supposedly at some other rally or event where a similar crime had happened. And that's the crazy part about it. What are the chances that these people are at all these events? It's crazy. But after they, of course, arrested him, some time goes by and they say, "Oh yeah, he wasn't in fact the shooter." Well, duh, we knew that. So, I mean, he was far enough away where we knew that a handgun didn't really have a chance of shooting him either. And then you have, just recently in the last couple of days, somebody released another video where a security detail found a gun on the property that somebody had either lost or tossed or whatever, and they found a gun and they picked it up. And you guys will probably see that video surfacing here. I thought that one was interesting because it could have also just been a plant. So, I mean, a lot of stuff that was happening was just completely, ridiculous. So, and then you have all the other stuff that kind of fall, you have some claim that there was drones. Oh, we seen multiple drones flying by and stuff like that. I mean, those are also very, very far-fetched. The big one that I'm going to tell you guys, and most of you people should kind of use your common sense here, is there was no blood. So I don't know if any one of you guys that are watching have ever been hunting. I mean, I've hunted for, gators. I've hunted for boar, deer. And let me tell you something. When you use even something as small as a 22, not that you're going to kill anything with the 22, but let's just say something real small like a chicken or something, right? What happens? There's something called blood, right? God gave us blood. Blood runs through our veins. And when we get shot, unfortunately, the built-up pressures that run through our veins and through our arteries and stuff push that blood out. So if you're going to be shot here in the neck, believe me, there's going to be blood. I mean, whether you want it or not, there's going to be blood splattered everywhere. The thing is I think it's absurd to suggest that there was no blood because it's like, how can you have this massive of a slaughter and not have any blood? It's ridiculous. I mean, there has to be blood. So none of the security guards seem to have gotten blood on them. There was no blood anywhere on the walkways. I watched several videos where somebody recorded, as they're walking down the pathway, and there was no blood. So that in of itself was a big, big, big red flag to me. Like, why is there no blood? Like, there has to be blood somewhere. And so when I seen that, I'm like, there has to be blood. It's impossible. It's impossible. That was a dead giveaway that it was potentially the lapel mic, right? So my senses are saying that this was 1,000% coordinated. There was a lot of people involved, more than once. I think there was dozens and dozens of people involved. There was also this conspiracy. They claimed that initially, when a lot of this stuff was rolling out, there was a lot of searches on Google, and Google's public about their searches about everything, about specifically the doctors in a local area. They were Googling doctors. And it wasn't like multiple searches, but they were individual searches and on specific days. And they were looking for doctors down to judges presiding in the local area. I mean, there was all sorts of stuff that was very suspicious. Contractors, who do construction and stuff like that. So very suspicious at the bare minimum. Like, when you look at all the stuff going on, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, there was somebody that came out, an eyewitness, and he's saying, "Hey, I know he didn't get shot in the front because I was standing right there, and I know it came out from somewhere else because the gunshot, I didn't see any exit wound or blah, blah, blah." And he's getting cut off by somebody, which is then confirmed to be somebody that works for Turning Point USA. And so you have all of these different situations where none of them make sense. I mean, and it's also, my suspicions are, what you can do is when you have a scenario where there is just a lot of crap going on, I think ultimately what they're probably trying to do is they're trying to basically divert or just distract, right? Because if you can release, say, 30, 40, or 100 different conspiracies, and even if there is some truth to some of them, even a few, you're never going to get to the bottom of it, because what happens is the truth gets buried in all the lies, and nobody's smart enough or wise enough or has discernment to be able to make sense of all between all the noise. I think one thing that really ticks me off about the situation is Erica Kirk. So Erica Kirk, let's talk about the grieving widow, right? So for everybody that watched her, I'm married. I have, multiple kids, and I get it. I have a pretty big family. So Charlie Kirk was a very patriotic guy. I mean, patriarchy was his style. In other words, he was for men working and being in the work field, women being at home and being stay-at-home moms. Patriarchal is a very male-dominant perspective where man has control over the woman in a household. Potentially, he is the head of the household. And he was very, very adamant about this. There was a lot of podcasts where he's talking even with Erica. There was one podcast I actually watched where he's having a conversation with Erica about, yeah, I get all the money and I basically distribute it, and he should buy everything for your wife and da-da-da. But the thing is, he's saying that the male controls the money, and he controls the business, or he controls the basically the way that the big decisions are made, where we live, stuff like that. So the crazy part about this situation is right after Charlie Kirk gets shot, I mean, she makes an appearance at the even pre-memorial. She makes a statement where she's crying and she's addressing all of the people and stuff like that. That whatever you want to call that, it was very unwatchable. When you're looking at her body language, or when you're looking at her behavior, the whole situation felt extremely scripted and extremely insincere. Like, it was just not sincere. I felt like she had put on a show. Everybody's done some research on her. She's been on several shows. I don't remember. I think it was either The Bachelor or she's been in some music videos. She was a beauty pageant winner. That was actually one of Trump's beauty pageants, from what I hear, based on some of the stuff we've watched. So that was all very suspicious. But it's the fact that it's even more so than that. I think the biggest issue is not just the fact that she's this individual. It's who she is, right? So for anybody that's done a little bit of research and found out who she actually is, I mean, she comes from a very interesting bloodline. So her mom, so Lori and Kent Fronsvie. So Lori is the mother, Kent is the father, and so they're actually both of the parents, and they have a very interesting. If you look at their careers, this is the one where I thought it was very suspicious, because you have the father who supposedly helped design the dome for the Israelis. I mean, basically that protection dome that shoots down any missiles. And then you have the mother. She's in cybersecurity, and there was actually a very interesting video that surfaced. The video surfaced was Erica Kirk sitting in the podcast, and they're interviewing her, and they're saying, "Hey, where did you actually work? Where did you work? And what did you do?" And she's kind of going through it. She's like, "I did this, I did that." And she's like, well, how did you guys end up in Arizona? She's like, "Oh, well, my mom got a special assignment here. And the special assignment was to work for Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security." That's pretty insane. And Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense thing actually completely threw me off a loop, because I was like, what are the chances that she's going to be working for Department of Defense? And it's like, okay. And so she was on a special assignment, moves to Arizona, which is okay. Let's just pretend that has nothing to do with it. And then the dad working somewhere else. And then I heard the grandpa was part of the Freemasons. And if you guys know anything about the Freemasons, there's all sorts of suggestions about them, how they're affiliated with the Illuminati, and there's child sacrificing, a bunch of stuff involved. That's a topic for another day, of course. But I thought that was a very interesting thing, because if he's a Freemason, and there's a lot of Freemasons. I mean, some people say it's just a club. It's definitely a lot more than that. It's very cultish, and it's very anti-Christian. So you have that. And then how they met was kind of suspicious, because I felt the fact that Erica claimed that they had met in Israel. So when she was asked, well, how'd you guys meet? Oh, I was standing in line and I seen him, and somebody said, "Oh yeah, that's Charlie Kirk," and I didn't know him, and there's this, love at first sight moment. And I thought that's absurd, because the way that, she technically met him was at Turning Point USA, and there's a lot of people that claim she was planted there, by potentially somebody that works there internally. I don't know how true that is, but it makes sense. I mean, she did know a lot of people there, and she kind of got into that business somehow. But the idea is, of course, if she knew somebody and somebody had planted her, she probably met either one of the chief of staff or whoever they are. Or, you have a lot of people working there, and whoever introduced her was probably somehow associated to something that maybe happened. And so you have that basically situation where there's claims that she was a plant. They actually claim that she was quite literally a plant. The red flag that I got about Erica was the memorial. Her memorial, she shows up to this thing. She's all bedazzled, and I mean, she was bedazzled at the post shot. I don't know what you want to call it. Kind of the press conference speech that she did. She had a bunch of rings on, and there's one almost looked like a Freemason ring and stuff like that. But interestingly enough, at the memorial, she's wearing white. I mean, she's going to her husband's memorial, and she's publicly addressing pretty much the entire country, and she's wearing white. And so I thought that was crazy. So, I mean, you don't go to a funeral wearing white. And some people will say, well, it wasn't a funeral. And I'm like, well, what are you doing wearing white when you're addressing your husband's funeral? So anyways, that was a red flag to me. But she was trying to force tears. I call them crocodile tears because there was no tears. She's not crying. She's not emotional. You look at her face and you can tell she's just not emotional. That was really, really difficult to watch because as you're kind of watching her behavior, you're noticing that a lot of this stuff is very like scripted. And you can actually look this up. She was a soap opera actor at one point, a very short period of time. The other thing that I found really crazy is everybody that knew Charlie Kirk knew he was very like anti-education. He's like, it's all for indoctrination. You don't need all of this, 4-year degrees and stuff like that. He would go into these colleges and he would literally embarrass these graduates or these, master's degree, even, doctorate degree, candidates, where he would ask them questions, and then he would ask them questions specifically about what philosophers they knew about or which, economists they knew about, and they would know nothing. They would just fact check them and say, hey, what do you actually know? Like, do you actually know anything that's useful, or are you just here to be brainwashed and indoctrinated? Well, Charlie Kirk was while Charlie Kirk was a very kind of anti-establishment, anti-school, Erica Kirk was a professional student. She had graduated with a political science degree. She had graduated with some international relations degree that was affiliated with her political science degree. She was basically hopping around. She went to 4 universities total. She then had some sort of a pre-law degree. It wasn't an actual law degree, but it was a pre-law degree. Okay, so she learned basically legalistic terminology, and she probably can whiff through a contract like no other because she understood it. Then she went to Trinity, which is a more known college that she went to, and she got her doctorate in